Good afternoon, everybody, I think it is now. I know quite a lot of you, some of you I don't. You can read about me on the back of the sheet. I'm afraid my presentation is a little bit more technical and not as exciting. Sorry, did I go wrong here? My job title has recently changed, by the way, so I'm now, I think, Head of Standards and Integrity. We are having a reorganisation in Geneva. But anyway, more of that later. So, in terms of what we're doing at PEFC International to help people with the EUDR alignment, you heard this morning from the UK and Ireland about the sustainable forest management systems or schemes as they're known, and obviously there is the one global chain of custody standard which certification bodies such as Soil Association deliver. I'm also leading with my colleague Simon Flynn on the data and geolocation integrity developments, which obviously we have to coordinate with all of our national governing bodies and certified organisations. And then I'll let you know a little bit about the fact that we have one and soon to be two colleagues who are based in Brussels who do all of the EU engagement and lobbying work. So in terms of the sustainable forest management technical development, we have an international benchmark standard which the national country systems use to develop their own national standards. So the UK UCWAS standard has taken elements of the international benchmark standard in its recent revision, and Ireland has gone through a similar process. We have just recently rewritten a version of this to be EUDR aligned, and the public consultation on that will be happening sometime this month and will run for 60 days. And what we've done is pretty much copy-pasted word for word from the EUDR regulations the things which were not in there to begin with. And that's meant changing a few definitions and adapting some of the wording. And then this then gets a bit tricky, because what's then got to happen for the PEFC certified forests around the world in the 55 countries which operate their national systems is, once this is properly approved and published sometime in August or even September, the national governing bodies, as we call them NGBs, so that's PEFC UK and PEFC Ireland, will then have to take that published version and start changing their standards and their systems to add those words in. And that doesn't happen overnight. That is not a fast process, because accreditation and endorsement is not sexy, it's very dull and boring, and it takes ages. So I'm just trying to explain it in layman's terms. So what will happen is, and I have this habit of telling you, I already told you what's on the next slide, is PEFC Ireland and PEFC UK will have to start in earnest trying to get the wordings changed as soon as possible. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, we can discuss it over lunch, we can do the Q&A later. UCWAS is, as we said, in a never-ending final stage because it's married to FSC, and PEFC Ireland is stuck in a very expensive analysis process at the moment with a Finnish forestry consultancy. But as soon as possible, as soon as physically possible, that all those approval systems kick in and will happen, you will adapt your wording, and therefore PEFC certified forests and the material coming out of them will be as aligned as possible with the EUDR wording. Until that happens, it doesn't mean you can't sell that timber into the European Union. It just means it has a more tortuous route or a more complicated route through the chain of custody due diligence process. And all the other 47 endorsed systems around the world, so Germany, Austria, France, Sweden, Finland, they've all got to do the same thing. And so we have a team in Geneva who are working on this as fast as they can. And there you go, that's what I've just told you. So in practical terms, throughout 2025 and possibly even into 2026, there will be PEFC certified timber from different parts of the world, which when it comes out of forest will not be EUDR aligned, but it will become EUDR aligned by going through the chain of custody standard. And hopefully everybody understands what I'm trying to say. It's quite difficult things to try and explain in simple terms. Little slightly easier story for chain of custody. So what we've done with chain of custody is we have created a modular optional EUDR standard, which is basically the due diligence system part of our 2002 chain of custody standard. It's out for consultation at the moment, and the consultation ends on May the 7th. So if you go to the PEFC website, you can then log in and go through, and you can make comments on the document, and you can read it and see what it says. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavour of how it works. So any chain of custody organisation who has a PEFC chain of custody certificate right now, if they want to, and obviously all the ones in the 27 EU countries probably will, and any of you here who trade with Europe probably will as well, you will take this standard once it's published, optionally, and add it to your certification scope. So you will get in touch with your certification body, they will add it to the scope once they've become accredited, and then you'll have some kind of audit. It could be remote, it could be on site, Sam can tell you later. And then that will mean you can then use the EUDR aligned due diligence system and start making EUDR aligned claims. So at the moment, the way it's going to work, and all your software teams will now be having nightmares, is the proposal at the moment is that the normal PEFC claim will have the phrase PEFC EUDR put in front of it. It doesn't need to be in red ink, it's just in red ink at the moment so that you can tell the difference. So that will be the output claim if material or products go through the EUDR aligned DDS, and so that's the sort of claim you will be making on your invoices and delivery notes and in your software systems. And I'm afraid I don't quite know the answer yet, but in terms of like, can we abbreviate it, it's like the answer is no, because that is telling you that that is from the EUDR aligned system. And FSC have come up with a similar system. I think they're using regulatory claim and a different
Regulatory plus.
Regulatory plus, yeah. There you go.
Rob, quick question. Where do we stand on the X% in EUDR?
Sorry?
Where do we stand on X% in EUDR?
Well, just to cover that off straight away, mass balance is not a thing in FSC or PEFC. Because control sources have already come through a due diligence system, what forestry does in the certification world is not mass balancing. Mass balancing in the agricultural world is you buy some dodgy soy, 3,000 tons of a ship, and you buy another shitload of good soy and you swap them. It's like, we don't do that. The only way you can mix things in these systems is it has to come into control sources, either FSC controlled wood or PEFC controlled sources. So the percentage element, the fact that it's mixed, controlled sources and certified, doesn't matter. So there's no mass balance implications for the forest industry here. And this pretty much works in the same way as the existing due diligence system within the 2002 standard. But what we've done is we've just added all the words and phrases that Maggie was explaining to you in terms of FPIC and the extra legality checks and some other social checks and things into this document. So when you then use this document, you will run through a due diligence process, and depending on what claim the raw materials or the products arrive with, it takes a different route through the due diligence system. So there are now in the document, I think, 6 tables to go through, 6 or 7, I can't remember, sorry. And they're like the tables in the 2002, so it's a series of questions which you have to answer. And so obviously you have to include these components. So you have to look at this risk of deforestation and forest degradation, look at all the EUDR defined legality. We've added extra detail to what we call controversial sources. And then of course you've always got this complexity of supply chain, mixing things coming in that shouldn't be there, that kind of thing. The way we've worded it is there's a whole bunch of options that will have the outcome of negligible risk. So if material is coming from a PEFC certified forest, which is EUDR aligned, so the benchmark standard has been worded into the national system and it's all been approved, then that will go through the DDS very quickly, and that you can make a case that is negligible risk. We're also doing the usual. We're very kind to people like FSC. We're saying that if something arrives from another credible certification standard and it has an EU reference number, you can also consider that to be negligible risk, for example. And then depending on which claims it arrives with, then you'll take it through your own system. So in terms of what's happening now, as I say, the consultation on that document runs to the 7th of May. We have our General Assembly and week 25-year anniversary in Paris in May. So we're hoping that this document will become finally approved, and then it'll be published, we hope, sometime in July. I have a meeting on May the 3rd with the certification bodies to start talking about accreditation, because the certification bodies will need to be accredited to deliver this standard, or this modular standard. And then the certification bodies will then need to start training their auditors, and then some of you in the room will then be asking for this certification scope. So your audits hopefully will start happening in the autumn or the back end. I mean, you can probably gather from the tone of some of the conversations, the EU's timetable is totally unrealistic. And there are at least 20 European countries and ministers and politicians all calling for it to be delayed. And then there's a whole bunch of the NGOs and other people calling for it not to be delayed. So hopefully sometime in the summer they will back down and they will announce a delay, because nobody around the world is ready. So you're not alone. You know, I talk to Americans, Canadians, Indonesians, Malaysians, everybody's up in arms about this. There aren't enough auditors to actually do these audits, and it's going to take some of the certification bodies months to actually gain their accreditation from their accreditation bodies. So we can only go as fast as we can go, but I'm trying to go as fast as I can. So in terms of the data and the geolocation, this is now hopefully the good news and the interesting bit. PEFC has no plans to run a centralized command and control system. We're not doing, what's the word? It's just gone completely out of my head now. We're not doing blockchain.
Oh, sorry.
Okay? I'll just slay that dragon straight away. However, the good news is I'm talking to at least 10 tech companies, and we do have a tech startup company with us in the room today that you can talk to. And I'm hoping next week to announce the first partnership with a company called LiveEO, which is a German company, space tech company. And there are other companies who are now entering this market with commercial solutions. They're all satellite-based technology companies, and they are building software solutions which you can buy. And the idea is you can then upload the geolocation data. They do the satellite check for you. They tell you whether it's green to go or orange or red. You can put in all your paperwork. It'll help you write a due diligence statement. And then you can then add or invite your supply chain and customers into that software. And everybody has to pay a certain amount of money, obviously. And then it will then pass around the data appropriately with various Chinese walls and security checks. So the answer is the tech companies, so people like LiveEO, Sapiens, DeepLight, etc., and there are more coming to the market, they will produce these solutions, okay? Or if you're a very big company, you'll probably have your own in-house software developers, and then you'll come up with some mix and match solution. But technology is the way to make this work. Without the technology, the system will fall apart within a matter of months. And as Maggie mentioned, the information center is not going to be ready until October or November here.
Can I just,
Julie,
without wishing to scare the room, the cost for these things is between 70 and 200,000 pounds per annum, depending on your use.
Sorry, can I just react to that? I'm in the process of negotiating a deal with LiveEO where there will be a PEFC dedicated website where PEFC certified organizations sign up. Mm-hmm. And unless you are a large enterprise, there will be fixed pricing.
Okay, they're currently quoting 120.
No, this is much lower. Knock a zero off it. For SMEs and the like, we're talking really reasonable prices. Yeah. They're going to be publishing this in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, hopefully that's good news. So, in terms of my job and Simon's job, because we've only been at PEFC International for 6 months for me, 6 weeks for Simon, we're having a much bigger debate within the PEFC Alliance about data and databases and things. So we will need to update the PEFC International database to cope with the actual claims and the certification scopes, etc. But remember what we said earlier is the species Latin names for all the species in your product are required. FSC and PEFC at the moment have this kind of easy, well, it's optional kind of thing, and there's lots of holes in my database which I need to fix. If you take the EUDR scope, the species information will be mandatory because you won't get it into the EU otherwise. Or if you're an island, you won't be able to put it on the market otherwise. So for board products and paper products and other composite products, you'll have these big long lists of species, which most big companies, to be fair, do have those, and certification bodies are pretty good at collecting them. But my challenge over the next 2 years is to completely redesign our database, because at the moment, only the national governing bodies can enter the data, which is nonsense. So we're going to redesign the database so that hopefully the certification bodies and the certified organisations themselves can enter data into the database. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. So, and we're also going for RED 2, separate conversation, but we're also going for RED 2 biomass scope this year. So if anybody's in that market, then we'll be building a new database to deal with that as well. Our database, by the way, is called Caspia. That's the name of it. That's the name of the product. I've been running a data task force over the last 6 months. Maggie and a few others have been sat on it. We have our last meeting next week, or this week. And we've been meeting with all these tech companies, and we've been exchanging all sorts of thoughts and processes and things. So we're going to be issuing out information and guidance and offering training on all of these topics in the summer and into the autumn. Just very quickly on EU engagement, as Maggie said, the guideline document should be being published next month. It's got quite a lot of information in it. We've actually seen a copy of it because we've been allowed to, because we're on a committee that's looking into it. And it's got lots of sort of guidance in it for operators and traders about what to look for. And it has a section on voluntary certification schemes. And whilst it says that they're not a green lane, it does say some positive things. But you can also see within these documents the influence of various consultants and various ENGOs in the way that it's worded. I won't go into too much detail. When you get a copy of it yourself, you'll be able to read it and understand it. And obviously there's hints and stuff about quantity control. Now, I'm old enough to remember the online claims platform that FSC tried to launch, and a few of us in the room were also there at the time. But these are the sort of things that are being dangled and mooted for the future. If anybody thinks they can design a database that's going to add up all this data, then just forget it. So, the information system, the pilot test in January was awful. It was a complete failure, so they're going to go back and do it again. And they're hoping to get it out October, November time, so that gives companies like 4 or 5 weeks to try and figure out how it works before the legislation starts. So good luck with that. There is a very good FAQ EU website. If you just go to the EU website or just type in EUDR implementation, you'll find this page very quickly, and you can go into the FAQs where you can actually click on a PDF download. I would encourage you all to go and read all of those because there's a huge amount of information. As Maggie mentioned, all countries will start a standard risk because they tried to let the consultancy contracts and they're still trying to let it at the moment, so that's not good progress. And quite a few countries who firmly believe that they will be low risk will probably get a nasty surprise next year. Canada, I'm just saying personally, Canada's one of these countries that could end up as high risk. There's a lot of FPIC and Indigenous people issues, and there's also some deforestation issues perhaps. So there's countries that you think would be a shoo-in for low risk, and they might not be. I imagine Ireland and the UK will be low risk once they actually get the benchmarking done. I can't see why they wouldn't be. Just in terms of the competent authorities, this is about a month old now, but the red dots mean that they haven't yet chosen their monitoring organisation, so therefore it means they haven't trained their staff. And we're 7 months away? It's just unbelievable. But there you go. And as I've mentioned, there's a lot of pushback on can this be pushed back? And because the European elections are in June, we probably won't get any proper noises out of the Commission until July, August maybe. But it's a 50-50 as to whether they will stick to their guns or whether they will announce a delay. So just assume that there will be no delay. Sorry, this slide's animated. I'm just going to sort of flick through it because I've told you most of those things. And, sorry.
That's for tomorrow.
Then that.
So the slide after it, there's the EUDR webinar tomorrow.
Sorry, oh yes, oh yeah, right. Sorry, I've been on Sam's stag weekend, so I'm actually slowly coming back down to earth. But yeah, little advert tomorrow. It's probably me, actually.
It is yours. It's me.
I'll be at home tomorrow. It's fine. So there are 2 webinars tomorrow. Again, we're doing a whole series of explanation webinars, and I think we had something like 1,500 people signed up for the last one, and we had over 600 downloads of the video, etc. And so yeah, there's one in the morning, one in the afternoon, but you do have to register, and then it's on Zoom, and it's tomorrow.
Scan the QR code.
And yeah, I rattled through that very quickly, but hopefully we're 5 minutes left. If anybody has any burning questions, or Bev, sorry.
Maybe if you sign up and do the module, the PEFC module, you have that certification.
Yeah.
Does that mitigate the need for the annual EUDR audit that Maggie mentioned?
Good question. I would have to defer to my certification body colleagues, but it's a requirement on the operators and traders to have some kind of internal monitoring, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, maybe I was on the annual audit for EUDR, which part are you referring to?
We said if you have a high risk and you have mitigation, you have to have an annual audit.
So that's the requirement for the competent authorities for their own enforcement actions. So they need to be checking 9% of the imports from high risk, not the companies themselves.
Okay, so it wouldn't be BSW, you wouldn't be having that annual audit then?
No, I don't know how they select.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know how they would select which companies within that 9% to check. Presumably they follow intelligence and other kind of sources. You'd hope, but it's not a company audit per se. It's enforcement checks on imports, or on products based on the market.
If you don't sign up to the EUDR, will you still get PEFC or FSC certification? If you can clearly demonstrate that your products are being exported, will you still be certified under FSC or PEFC?
Yeah, the optional modules for FSC and PEFC to add on EUDR and EDS are a tack on to chain of custody.
Yeah, they're totally
so you
optional.
can hold chain of custody alone, and then you can decide whether you want to add the DDS module on top of that.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're a sawmill that's buying, Welsh pine and turning it into fence posts and selling them locally, you don't need it.
No, as long as you can demonstrate your co-products aren't them.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, obviously, all of this international regulation, people view it as a threat to certification. But what we're trying to do in designing our systems to be aligned and then pairing with tech companies is making your trade as frictionless and low risk as possible. So therefore, hopefully, our products and our services attractive, and voluntary certification, does carry on. But, sorry, there's one.
The EU reference number.
Yeah.
Do you have to get one issued for every consignment, or is it an annual or weekly, or how does it work?
It's every consignment. Yeah.
Every 25 ton load.
Well, yeah. If you're Norwegian and you're driving trucks across the border into Sweden, one truck at a time, then I presume that's the way it's going to have to work.
So I'm just thinking about that then. I mean, AW Jenkins sells co-products to growers, and you're talking about a very large number of wagons every week. Every wagon going to growers?
Well, no, sorry, because when Maggie talks about the declaration in excess, and we can probably talk about this afternoon, and Julie probably understands it better than me, the bigger companies will be able to say between a certain date and another date. That's to do with the production time range, which is not just harvesting. So if you're making something, then it's your production time range. Depending on risk, you can choose a production time range, and then you can upload your geolocation data points which match that. And what Maggie was explaining earlier is if you've got a 1,000 hectare forest and there's a 20 hectare clear fell in the middle of it, if you want to, you can draw the polygons right around the whole forest.
Yeah.
And there's only 10% or 5% of that forest that's been cut down. But the more you over declare as a company, the bigger the data sets and the bigger the risk, for everybody. But I reckon in the scale that we work at commercially, the excess declaration and the batch timings are going to end up being month or 3 months or, You know, but what you can't do, for example, is you can't just put the polygon around Great Britain and go, oh, it came from there. It actually has to be an ownership. You know, so
And just to add to that as well, so if it's Jenkinson UK lorries delivering into Kronospan in the UK, you don't have to give them a reference number. You just have to give them all the information of your polygons for where you're sourcing from, for where that load could potentially come from. It's Kronospan when they send a lorry or a container or a boat over to the continent, they have to create a reference number using your polygons and their own polygons from the harvesting and everyone else's polygons that is supplying into them. So they do that once per load. You just give them the information to allow them to do that.
Yeah. So I'm just getting the information from PSW or James Jones, whatever.
Exactly.
Or not.
And obviously, I'm saying that flippantly, that's a huge amount of information. You know, it's a gargantuan quantity of information.
Just take that very example you've given there of Jenkins, and if he's picking up good chips from Jones's or ourselves, I can't tell you where they actually came from, where those forests actually came from.
You would be saying, in the last 3 months, I've sourced from these polygons, and that's what's in this load.
Yeah. Your bark, chips, and sawdust will have come from a bunch of forests. If you're the sawmill, you've got to gather up all those polygons and then send them on down the chain. It's now 12:30, by the way. We do have a Q&A session after lunch, so I suggest hold your questions. One more from Julie then, sorry.
Sorry, just one other thing. Obviously West Fraser will be exporting to the EU, so that has huge implications for logs and some co-products, so we're looking at those. But in addition, I have had inquiries from UK-based businesses who do not export. An example would be Next, the retail store, who have captured the idea of EUDR and like it for their sustainability policies and have now started to ask for polygons. Next asked for, can you send us a polygon from one of your forests? So there's a lot of education needed out there, but something like PEFC, EUDR, DDS might satisfy those UK-based customers who want that additional kind of badge on their product for satisfying a legal requirement that's not applicable to us in the UK. So I can see there being a demand from other retailers and people like that who say, oh, can I have a little bit of EUDR, please? Even though we don't need to comply with it. That's how worried.
Okay, right, we're bang on time. Lunch is
Back in the room. Back in the room.
back in the room we were in for 1 hour. Okay, thank you.
Thrown at you.